If you've seen the Dogman movie, you probably don't know that Petey was actually inspired by a true story. Are you ready to uncover the heartbreaking story behind one of the biggest villains in the Dogman universe?
Son?
The name Petey is actually brilliant because it's a clear reference to Peter, a name known worldwide thanks to Spider-Man. In the story we're about to tell you, our main character is a 6-year-old boy who sadly grew up in a very troubled home. His name was Peter. He was born in the United States in the 1950s and lived in a poor neighborhood with his mom and dad. In the Dogman comics, we learn that Petey became an evil cat because of the awful things he went through, like being abandoned, living in a shelter for struggling families, and eventually watching his mom fall terribly ill. And what if we told you that a real boy named Peter went through almost the exact same things as the villain cat you already know? Today's video is extra special. Get ready to feel all the emotions. Grab your popcorn and get comfy, because it's time for another Cinewave. So where did Dave Pilkey, the creator of the comics, get the idea to make this character a cat? Most likely it all started with Peter's only real friend, a striped orange cat. At Peter's house, his father was a cruel man who constantly argued with his wife. Sadly, it was far from a happy home, and the daily routine never changed. The dad would wake up, leave to find money however he could, come home in the afternoon, and never spent any quality time with his family. Peter's mom took care of the house while he went to school, but whenever Peter had free time, he loved walking around the neighborhood. It was a place full of kind people, but what Peter really loved was going for walks with his best friend, an orange cat. Nobody knows the cat's name because it was a stray, but we like to think this was the first inspiration for little Petey. The boy would run up and down the sidewalks with the orange cat, and they would play hide and seek with each other. One day a heavy rainstorm hit the neighborhood, and the boy, being the kind soul that he was, brought the cat into the house, but that turned out to be a mistake. That night, Peter's dad walked into his room and saw a wet cat on the bed. He got so angry that he stomped on the cat's tail with full force. That moment became the inspiration for Petey's injured tail in the comics. In real life, the boy wanted to adopt the cat, but his father refused and kicked the poor animal out the same night. Peter never saw his furry friend again after that, and maybe that's why Dave Pilkey wrote the story where Petey abandons Lil Petey, and to make up for it, he gave them a happy ending where they reunite and live happily ever after. But in real life, the story was just heartbreaking. In the Dogman comics, Petey's mom is named Grace, but in real life, her name has been lost to time. It's an old story. The author probably chose that name because grace means kindness or something beautiful that a person receives. Peter's father was tired of being married to a woman he found boring, couldn't keep a job, and didn't like his own son. So one day while they were both out, he took all of his things and disappeared. Just like in the Dogman movie, when Crud sells everything Petey owned, Peter's cruel dad took the money and ran. When the mother and son got home, they found the place completely empty. But their sadness got even worse when the landlord showed up to demand the rent. Peter's father hadn't paid the rent in months and had to run off with the cash he got from selling all the furniture. Peter's mom had no way to fix the situation, and that's how they ended up getting evicted from their home. Do you have a super mom too? Drop a hashtag mom in the comments so we can meet you. If you're familiar with Dogman, you probably know that Petey once lived in a shelter for struggling families called Happy Home Shelter, where he and his mom were taken in by the kind-hearted Mrs. Pierce. In real life, Peter and his mom also ended up in a shelter. But there, his mom managed to find a job helping to take care of children, which allowed her son to stay in school. In the comics, you know that this period in Petey's life was actually kind of okay. Even after being abandoned by his dad, he and his mom found a place to live, and Petey even made a friend, Big Jim. In real life, Peter made a few friends too. They were all schoolmates who lived at the same shelter for low-income families, which meant they spent a lot of time together. Unfortunately, life hit Peter with more unfairness. He was blamed for something he didn't do. In Dogman, we know that the villain Piggy and his Fleas gang always caused trouble in the scout group that Petey was a part of. Eventually, one of them falsely accused Petey of causing a huge mess, and he was kicked out of the group. In real life, something terrible happened to Peter too. One day, his classmates were left unsupervised when their teacher didn't show up, and being rowdy kids, they painted on the walls and flipped over chairs. When the school supervisor saw the mess, he was furious and demanded to know who did it. The kids from the shelter were scared of getting into trouble, so they blamed Peter, who was completely innocent. The school principal got really angry and expelled him. That was heartbreaking, because it was the only school where Peter could study without his mom having to pay high tuition. Peter lived in that shelter with his mom for many years, while she worked hard to support him. Just like in the comics, the boy would sometimes have bursts of anger seeing his mom in that situation. Then one day, when he was a teenager, his mother passed away from an incurable disease. In Super Diaper Baby 2, Petey loses his mom and ends up being adopted by a criminal who loved robbing banks. And here's where you realize we're not just talking about Dogman, right? That's because Petey actually existed as a character before the Dogman series ever started. In real life, Dave Pilkey likely took this story and created the character, not as a human boy, but as an orange cat, as a tribute to the animal Peter loved, the same one that was hurt by his father. In the comic, the character Dr. Dilbert Dinkle used a machine that turned everything into water to break into bank vaults, until one day, during a heist, he accidentally turned himself into water. Meanwhile, the cat Petey was captured by Diaper Baby. In real life, the boy Peter was unfortunately adopted by a cruel man who did similar things. That was Peter's first contact with the world of crime. One day the man who adopted him was arrested, and Peter, who couldn't go back to the shelter, was left completely alone in the world. But by then the damage was done. In just a few months with that terrible man, Peter's anger grew, and it turned him into a villain. Having a cruel father who abandoned him and his mother, getting kicked out of his home and school, losing his mom to an illness, it was too much for the boy to handle. And with so much anger in his heart, Peter grew up into a bitter man.
But that's simply not possible.
As an adult, the real-life Peter and Petey from Dogman had a lot in common. He never forgot that cat he loved as a child. Besides his mother, that animal was the only living thing that had ever shown him love. That's why, as a grown man, Peter adopted a striped orange cat, and every time he went out to commit a crime, he brought his pet along. Because of that, the police started calling him the cat burglar. Can you imagine the headlines in the city? A cat robbing banks with its owner? As tragic as it is, it also sounds like something straight out of a movie. This story even inspired others, like the Orange Puss in Boots from DreamWorks' Shrek universe, and even Garfield. Have you noticed how, in so many movies, clever cats are almost always orange? They all reference Peter and his mischievous cat, who caused chaos in the city of Cleveland, Ohio, the same place where the Dogman creator was born. In real life, Peter became a well-known criminal, and of course that caught the attention of the police. There was a long investigation, but Peter was incredibly good at escaping capture, just like Petey in the comics. Then one day, the police chief had a brilliant idea. The best way to catch a cat is with a dog. And no, we're not saying this is what inspired Dave Pilkey to create Dogman. Every true fan knows he's been drawing superhero dogs since he was a kid. In real life, Peter was finally caught thanks to police canine units. After he was tried in court, the judge felt sorry for him and allowed him to keep his loyal cat in prison, on the condition that he would become a better person once he got out. Would you be a better person if you clicked the bell and subscribed to the channel? Of course, so do it! It was in prison that Peter met a friend who would later become inspiration for Dogman. His name was Jimmy. He was Peter's cellmate, and unlike Peter, Jimmy had been wrongfully imprisoned. He was a kind guy. He loved playing with Peter's pet cat, but that's not what made Jimmy important. What mattered was that Jimmy reminded Peter what really matters in life. In the comics, Big Jim is a sweet cat who, as a child, lost his parents in a car accident. It happened so early in his life that he barely remembers them. In real life, Jimmy helped Peter realize that even though life had been unfair to him, his mom had always loved him and did everything she could. And being a villain wasn't the way to repay that love. At first, Peter didn't want to hear it. But just like Captain Cupcake in the comics, Jimmy knew how to soften a frozen heart.
Oh, now I see.
When Peter got out of prison, unlike the villain in Dogman, he actually became a better man and never committed another crime. In the comics, Petey was arrested many times by Dogman, and his heart only started to change after he made a clone of himself and began to feel love for his son, Lil Petey. In real life, this emotional story inspired Peter's son, who was born many years later. His name was John. He worked as a teacher for many years and used to tell his father's story of redemption. Until one day, one of his students stopped doodling dogs and started really paying attention. Dogman is truly a powerful universe, one full of real-world inspiration. And you can stick with us to keep exploring the story behind the world's most heroic pup. We've picked 2 more videos for you to enjoy. We'll see you in the next one.